So my view is that we've got to get in there and have an argument. We've got to, let's take the issue of gay marriage. A lot of pastors, those who are literalists, who believe in the inerrancy of the Bible, will cite a passage in Romans that says homosexuality is an abomination. I mean, they don't. It doesn't say it that way, but that's it is in the Bible. There are a couple of passages there, and just start going hog wild on it. And nobody's there to say, well, is that obscure passage in Romans more important than Sermon on the Mount, or the entire story of how Jesus behaved towards all people? And I think that's an argument progressives can win. Well, and I think that, so just to finish up the point in terms of how we deal with these so-called wedge issues, we don't deal with it on election day. We deal with it between elections. If folks in rural Illinois, if you go into rural Illinois, and this is true all throughout the South, there is a news station and there are 8 Christian radio stations and maybe a country station. If that's all folks are hearing, that's the only source of information for 24 months or 22 months. And then the last 2 months, we're running some ads on CNN. We lose that argument. And so I think it's important for us to engage now. We have to be true to certain principles in how we engage. So I believe in church and state, separation between church and state. And as I point out in the book, historically, that's not to protect just the state, that's to protect the church. And the biggest advocates of church and state separation weren't just Jefferson and Madison, they were the Baptists, the forebearers of today's evangelicals, because they were worried that the Congregationalists and essentially the Anglican Church, which was dominant, would impose their views. And they said, no, we want to worship the way we want. So we need to retain that principle, and we need to retain the notion that if we're going to talk about faith, we shouldn't say that people leave their faith at the door. That's not possible. Martin Luther King didn't, every time he started marching on Washington, suddenly say, okay, I'm not a preacher anymore. But what you do have to insist on in a pluralistic democracy, if you want somebody to listen to you, is to translate whatever religiously motivated ideals that you have into a language that is accessible to all people. Some sort of universal language, a set of ethics or principles, moral ideas that is subject to reason and subject to argument. And you can't close the conversation up by simply saying, God told me so.
To what extent do you think that a new Democratic majority will have to occupy itself with repair work, with systematic reversal of a long list of policies of the recent Republican majority, without a lot of funds to work with?
I think that we have to be very clear and honest with the American people about the constraints that we're under right now. As I said, in terms of foreign policy, just because the Democrats take over, Kim Jong-il is still going to be in North Korea, and there's no easy solution to that problem. Iran is developing nuclear weapons. There are no easy solutions to that problem, and Iraq is a mess. Changes in tone from an administration could make an enormous difference. It's hard for Congress to entirely force that tone. Domestically, our budget is shot. And even if we begin to phase down the troops, we're still looking at tens of billions of dollars going to Iraq over the next several years, even if we phase down our occupation there. And so we're not going to have a lot of pleasant choices over the next couple of years. I think the American people understand that as long as we are leveling with them and not trying to overpromise in terms of what can be accomplished.
And the final question, I think, for the evening is give us a sense of what it's like. You went to the Senate at the beginning of last year. Give us a sense of what it's like to be a United States Senator. What was it that you encountered that was surprising when you got to Washington? What was it that was disappointing? And what might have been particularly rewarding?
Well, I open up the book by talking about walking into the Senate chamber. And I have the same feeling each time I walk in. Everybody has these little mahogany desks. They're like third grade desks. You can't really work on them, but they're very pretty. And some of them date back to 1819. Daniel Webster's desk is still in the floor of the Senate. And if you open up the drawer, the previous occupants of each desk have carved their names in their own hand inside the desk. So it's sort of an early form of graffiti. I don't know who started it. It's like Webster was here. So the tradition began, and so I pull open my desk, and I'll see names like Taft and Simon and Wellstone and Kennedy, Robert, and you realize that you're connected to this amazing history, that you're part of this experiment that's been going on for a couple of centuries, that in no way was guaranteed to succeed. And you can imagine sort of the debates that were taking place around secession and abolition and through the wars and then the filibustering of the civil rights movement and decisions about war and peace. And to be part of that conversation, that's a continuous conversation from the days of the Founding Fathers, is powerful. Now, so that's on the plus side. The disappointment is that most of the time that chamber is empty, except for one or two people who are talking. And I think a lot of folks here are probably aware of the fact that when you hear senators speaking on the floor of the Senate, they are almost always speaking to an empty room, except to the C-SPAN camera. And they may be turning and pretending like they're giving this great oration, but it's all a play, an act. The structure of the Senate, everybody's so busy, and their committees and the demands of the press and fundraising and so forth, and the way the rules are structured are such where is almost never the case that all 100 senators are on the floor listening to a debate. And when I was in the state legislature in Illinois, every senator had to be on the floor on every bill. And the sponsor would stand up and present it, and anybody could ask questions and force that sponsor to defend their views. And so you'd actually have a sense of deliberation. Now, 9 out of 10 times, the votes were already determined, and they'd go along party lines oftentimes. But 1 out of 10 times, you'd see an actual debate take place, and democracy as one envisions it would occur. And that almost never happens in the floor of the Senate. What you have is passing press statements, essentially, that are never join. And that, I think, is the disappointment.